All right. Good evening, everybody. Brian Keene here with you once again. Very glad to be with you. Didn't think I was going to be. If you haven't heard, I am just getting over not only COVID, but the flu as well. I caught them both uh, at some point, I guess, during the eighth annual Scares That Care charity weekend. They knocked me on my ass. It got very scary last Thursday and Friday. I was having trouble breathing. But they put me on Paxlovid. Plus, luckily, I am fully vaccinated and boosted, and that made all the difference. But even with all of that, it still really knocked me on my ass. I'm better now, though. I can breathe. Just a cough left over, but I don't have a lot of energy. So this will probably be a short stream tonight. Hope you understand that. You may also notice we're not in my office tonight. We are, in fact, in my kitchen. Up there is my liquor cabinet. um, the reason for that, if you subscribe to my newsletter, then you know that uh, we inherited a feral cat colony, which I've been slowly taking care of, and by taking care of, I mean finding homes for them and such. But we have three kittens that are upstairs, currently sequestered in Mary's office. We found homes for all three. They'll actually be going to their new homes over the weekend and early next week. But we have to keep our indoor kitties separate from them, of course. So the entire top floor is closed off. Um, I would like to be able to work in my office, but this little guy stands at the basement stairs, the door at the basement stairs, and howls for me. So he and I made a deal. I would work here in the kitchen until the kitties are gone and we have the run of the upstairs again, and he would let me work. And of course, as we're starting the stream, he has forgotten that rule. He is over here bringing me bottle caps to throw for him, etc. So anyway, Dallas, you stay over there. So yeah, that's what's going on. Let us get to your questions for this week. We start off with Missy. Missy asks, how do you pronounce all of the 13's names? I feel like I pronounced them right, but there's a couple that I'm unsure of. Well, Missy, that's a great question. Um, Luckily, we have a great source book. This is the Field Guide to the 13, written by myself and Mark Silva. One of the rarest of my books. Only 26 of these were published. Um, Impossible to find in hardcover. However, all of this text has been reprinted on Patreon. If you go to briankeene.com, click the Patreon index, scroll down through, you will find the text for the Field Guide to the 13. And why am I using it? Because I can't remember all the 13 off the top of my head. I have to refer to this book. So, in the order they appear in the book, here is how I pronounce them. Some of these entities are based on Sumerian, Mesopotamian deities and legends. Some are based on Judeo-Christian deities and legends. I'm not sure of my pronunciation because I'm not an academic. Look around. I'm a country boy who keeps his whiskey up on top of the kitchen cabinet. But this is how I pronounce them. Okay, Ab, Api, API, Leviathan, Behemoth, Kandara, Meeble, Perturabo, Nodens, Star, Cat, Apu, and of course the unknown. So that's how I pronounce them. I've heard other people pronounce them differently, and that's cool too. It's my franchise, but it's there for everybody. You can pronounce it however you are comfortable with. Okay, next question. Austin asks, hope you are doing well, Brian. Thank you for continuing the live stream with your busy workload. What are your feelings about the proposed merger of Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster? Austin, I had intended to write a really long essay for the Patreon about that very thing. Unfortunately, I got sick, and I just, as you guys have seen, I've had enough energy to basically serialize that little short story every day, and that's it. but I do hope to get around to it next week. In a nutshell, I don't think it's a great idea. We're down to very few mass market publishers left. They've become these giant corporate conglomerates. Penguin, Random House, Simon and Schuster merging. That's too big. That's too unwieldy. Authors will suffer, and their readers will suffer. It's already getting impossible to sell something to what remains of mass market, and there's a number of reasons for that. One of them is that there's only so many books they can publish. That's why you've seen the rise of the indie press and the rise of the small press, and the indie press has significantly taken off in the last 5 years, and that is a direct result of these mergers. When you have authors like F. Paul Wilson, I'll use Paul as an example. F. Paul Wilson, New York Times best-selling author, USA Today best-selling author, creates the Repairman Jack series, which is still to this day beloved. It's one of the best-selling literary franchises in the business. When Paul is having trouble selling his next book to a mainstream publisher, not because of his sales record, but simply because of he's competing against so many other authors, there's a problem there. Okay. I know that, Stephen King testified, in the trial about this and everything. And, I saw a lot of jackasses online saying, well, he makes $250,000 a book. Why does he care? Well, it's not just him. He's fighting for everybody. He's fighting for people like me. He's fighting for people below me. Sure, he gets a big advance, okay, but he gets less of an advance if the merger happens. And what do you think happens to the rest of us who aren't getting the sizable advances someone like him is? We get shit. There's a reason that I haven't done anything mainstream since Pressure, and I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to burn bridges. I touched on it in End of the Road. If you read End of the Road, it's all there. You can pretty much figure it out for yourselves. But there's a reason I'm sticking indie these days. So yeah, I am against this merger. I think it's bad for books. I think it's bad for booksellers. I think it's bad for publishing in general. Good question, Austin. Thank you for asking that. And I do hope to further write down my thoughts and actually have them make sense when I'm feeling better. And I will, of course, post that to Patreon. Henry asks, you've written for a lot of media properties, Masters of the Universe, Doctor Who, Aliens, etc. What would your dream one to write a whole novel for? What would be your dream one to write a whole novel for? Honestly, there's not much left, Henry. I would love to, Conan, for example. I'd love to take a stab at Conan. The Barbarian, not the night show host. I think I could do something fun and interesting with the Universal Monsters. I'd love to take a stab at the Friday the 13th franchise. I don't think people would like what I did with it because mine would be even more out there than Jason X, which, by the way, is my favorite Friday the 13th movie. I like it because it had the balls and the audacity to do something different than have Jason run around in woods at the camp killing off surplus teenagers. It was ballsy and daring to say, let's put Jason in outer space. And I love it for that reason. So maybe any of those. Mr. McCobb asks, who would win in a wrestling match between Lemmy and God? I mean, Lemmy. That's not even much of a question, brother. Lemmy would win. Hold on. Mary San Giovanni's shouting something. What's that?
The correct answer is that's a trick question. Lemmy is God.
There you go. If you folks couldn't hear her, she said that is a trick question. Lemmy is God. Good answer from my girl. Reason number 5,792 why I love her. Funny joke about Lemmy from Motorhead. Author Bev Vincent, who you might know, obviously you Stephen King fans will know him, and he and I did Dissonant Harmonies together. You might know him from that. He was listening to Brian Keene Radio all day, my free online radio station, which all of you should be listening to all day. And Motorhead's cover of Metallica's Nothing Else Matters come on. And Bev messaged me and said, whoever's doing this cover of Nothing Else Matters sounds like Grover from Sesame Street. I said, that's Lemmy from Motorhead. So I think he sounds more like Cookie Monster myself. But Jim Cobb asks, any advice for a writer trying to get more engagement on Twitter? I have Facebook down pretty well, but can't seem to get much traction on Twitter. Twitter is all about engagement. And there are ways to get that engagement. If you've ever paid attention to my Twitter feed, I follow a pretty close pattern. I tweet first thing in the morning, and usually it's something promotional. Then I'll retweet a few tweets that have been sent to me that I think other people would like to see. Then in the afternoon, I'll tweet something silly, some kind of nonsense that Mary got up to, or, maybe I'll tweet a picture from back in the day. And then in the evening, I'll usually do a promotional tweet again. Twitter's algorithm picks those up because I time them around the same time every day. I've noticed that Twitter's algorithm will push them into people's feeds because of that, because it's a time-based thing. And I've trained the algorithm to know, hey, this is around when he's going to be posting. You got to be sincere on Twitter. You can't just post spam. You can't just post tweets to your books. That shit gets buried. It's not like Facebook where you check your feed and you have these big long posts. Your average tweet is this big, and that shit just gets lost. People won't engage with that. So you got to be real. You have to have something real to say. Now, what is that? Well, it's different for every person. Find something that works for you. Maybe it's maybe you offer a little writing advice every day, or maybe Donnie Goodman does a thing and it's silly, but it works. He photoshops Leatherface into a different famous photo every day, and it works. I look forward to those. Wes Southard used to do a thing where he would ask the question of the day. But the idea is to get people responding to it, people retweeting it, people liking it. The more of that you have, the more the algorithm will push your tweet. So that's my advice, in a nutshell on how to get more engagement on Twitter. That's how to do it. Disheveled by Dawn asks, is Earthworm Gods 2 Deluge coming to audiobook? Yes, it is. Scott Weinberg, who narrated the first one, is narrating the second one. Scott has a day job as a critic and a reviewer and a writer. He did a great job narrating, but narrating audiobooks is not his day job. It's not how he earns a living. So I'm not going to push him to get it done. It's whenever he gets it done, it will be out, hopefully before the end of the year. And last question from the patron, WB Zervis asks, hey, Brian, what do you do when you come across a story by another author that's similar to one you're working on or plan on working on? Do you scrap your idea altogether or rework it? We talked about Bev Vincent earlier. If you read Dissonant Harmonies and you read my story notes on there, I had that happen. That's why that damn book took so long to bring out. I was working on a story where OCD was transferred from person to person like a virus. And then I got King's Just After Sunset. Mary, what was the name of that story? Was it N? N. And the central idea of N let me clarify for the pinheads who will watch this on YouTube later. I am not at all suggesting Stephen King ripped me off. He did not. He did not know I was working on a story about OCD. I did not know he was working on a story about OCD. It just happened. Okay. It's like Under the Dome and the Simpsons movie and my own Darkness on the Edge, or no, excuse me, Gathering of Crows. All of them involve a dome around the town. They all come out around the same time. These things happen. However, that idea, OCD being a virus, it was too much, too similar. So I scrapped the whole thing. There have been other times where I don't scrap the idea. I never throw away anything. And there's an essay on Patreon about this. I never, ever, ever throw away anything. A recent example, we had entire chapters that we had cut, Stephen Shrewsbury and I, that we had cut from Throne of the Bastards. Never used them in the book. And, 8 years later, as you guys saw on Patreon last month, we reworked them into a short story. So never, ever, ever throw anything out. But yes, you may find that if there's a story similar to the one you're working on, that you may want to rework it or revise it. Here's an important thing, though, WB, if I may call you WB. Horror fiction is the oldest form, the oldest genre of storytelling in human existence. When you look at the cave paintings that our ancient ancestors made, many of them depicted things that they were afraid of. Horror has been around for a long time. Horror fiction has been around for a long time. I am very firmly a believer that there are no more original ideas in horror. And people bristle when I say that, but I stand by it. I don't think there are any more original ideas. I think what it is now is what we do with the tropes and what we do with those ideas. We put our own spin on it. An example is The Rising. Okay, I'm not the first person to write a zombie novel. And I'm not the first person to make zombies popular again. George Romero did it back in 1968. But I was the first person to tell that unique story, to put my spin on it. A divorced dad searching for his son during the zombie apocalypse. That was my story to tell. So if you run across, let's say, I'm trying to think here, WB, let's say you're working on a story about a haunted jug of iced tea, and then you find that Jonathan Jans has also written a story about a haunted jug of iced tea. How similar is it? If it's a case like me and Stephen King's End, yeah, you may have to scrap it. But if it's Romero's Night of the Living Dead versus The Rising, can you put your own spin on it? Can you give it your own voice? Can you take the tropes that already exist, that others have already done to death, pardon the pun, and put something new on it? And I think a lot of the best horror these days does just that. So, all right, that takes care of the patron questions. Let's go over here to the chat. Excuse me one moment. My throat's getting dry. All right. Gregorio asks, okay, he's talking about Darkness on the Edge of Town. Dez tells a story about himself, Levi, and others thinking they were the seven and fight Meeble. Levi gets wrecked, as do the others. Will that ever be in book form for us to read? Probably not. Of course, Dez appears in Invisible Monsters, which has been serialized on Patreon. I don't want to spoil that in case you haven't read it. There will be a flashback to what you're talking about in an upcoming work. Excuse me. Again, COVID and the flu. There will be a flashback to that, but it's not going to be book length. I think it'll satisfy you. I think it'll give you enough of the story there that you'll be like, oh, that's badass. That's cool. But it's not going to be book length. Let's see here. Efren, good evening. He says, did the characters die in the complex? Is the exit from the complex the one in the 7? And how do you keep track of all the different dimensions? It's like Marvel and DC. The way I keep track is my pre-readers at this point. Mark Silva, who we mentioned before, and Todd Clark and Stephen McDornell. They've forgotten shit, or they remember shit that I've forgotten, and they call me on it. Another neat thing is collaborators like Brian Smith and I working on Suburban Gothic. I believe, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was at one point he's like, well, you did this in another book. So, you can't do it. I'm sorry, I'm being surrounded by cats. All of you get. Now, did the characters die in the complex? That's up for you to decide. Here's my thoughts on the complex. And I'm not going to get political, okay? I'm not going to talk about anybody's different political beliefs, but I firmly believe this country is doomed. Our great American experiment is almost over, and I believe the reason for that is because of the divisions in our country. We see racism and intolerance and things that we should be done with in 2022, not only back again, but back in a starring fucking role. But it's not even that. The divisions run even deeper than that. You do it right there in the hashtag, Marvel or DC. People argue over that. People argue over Star Wars versus Star Trek. They argue over Coke versus Pepsi. They argue over everything. We have become so divided. And I wanted to talk about that in the complex. We're sold this idea of the American dream where small town America or, big city, who your neighbor is in the suburbs, who the person is who lives across from you in the apartment. And that's just not true. It's not true anymore. So, when I wrote the complex, I was that writer living in that apartment. And I took the time to get to know my neighbors, and they thought I was weird for doing that because, nobody does that anymore. And I wanted an extremely diverse cast, from different backgrounds and different races and different genders and different creeds, different beliefs, different economic situations. I wanted that cast on purpose because I wanted to show that they have common ground. Now, in the book, it's they all want to live. But there's all kinds of common ground we as a society have. We've just forgotten it. We all know what it's like to have your first kiss. We all know what it's like to have a kitten or a puppy in your face. We all know that smell that a newborn infant has. We all know what it's like to have your heart broken. There are common things that should be uniting us. And I wish we could get back to those instead of the things that divide us. And of course, for the cast in the book, the thing that's uniting them is staying alive and fighting against the horde. The theme running through the book is see people for who they are. Not the old lady or the two drug dealers downstairs or the old Vietnam vet or the single mom. That's who they're introduced to you as, very superficial. But then you get to know who they really are. And we need to see people for who they really are. So at the end, when they're running towards the barricade, if you look at Stephanie's dialogue, she's thinking, see us for who we are, see us for who we are. Do the soldiers see them as regular human beings, or do the soldiers see them as, the murderous, rampaging horde? We don't know. I don't know. That is up to the reader. It's up to your individual interpretation. Is the exit from the complex the one in the 7? No. I guess technically yes, because they've all been merged now. The 7 of, as we find out in the first book, they all their selves get merged. But no, the exit in the complex is not the same version of himself that appears in the 7. So, MJ Withers in the chat. We talked about Brian Keene Radio earlier. I got 30 different tracks by him on Brian Keene Radio. So, check it out. You can listen to him. Jim Cobb says, hi, Mary. So, hi, Mary. Adam says, can't thank you enough for introducing me to Richard Lehman. In your opinion, what is the strongest and weakest Lehman novels? Oh, man, that is a good question. Strongest: Funland, Savage, Island, The Stake, Among the Missing, Traveling Vampire Show. Weakest, I mean, I would have to actually sit down and look. Some of the fastbacks that he wrote are not real good. Once Upon a Time and on Halloween, it was The Glory Bus was but that's the thing with Lehman. Even the ones you're going to have fun with. I think his best book is not a novel. His best book is a writer's tale. Very hard to find these days, but if you do ever find one on eBay and you can afford it, if you're a Lehman fan, it's absolutely essential. If you're a writer, I'm not sure that it's essential anymore, but I think it's still vital. If any of you have read Ronald Kelly's new memoir, very much in the vein of A Writer's Tale. Tom asks, which character in What We Do in the Shadows is closest to you and which reminds you of other authors? Mary, do you want to get in on that?
Laszlo.
She says Laszlo. She says I'm like Laszlo.
Yes.
Really?
Well, you're like a cross.
Really, my love?
You're like a cross between Laszlo and Colin Robinson.
She says I'm a cross between Laszlo and Colin Robinson. So I don't know. I do. They are my two favorite characters. I love Laszlo and I love Colin. Who are the other authors? I mean, I don't know.
Oh, you definitely know.
Well, yeah, of course I know. I don't know that I want to say it publicly on a stream. I think Matt Wilderson and Wesley Southard would both make fine Colin Robinsons. I think Mary is what's Laszlo's? Nadia. Totally Nadia. I'm whispering now so she won't hear me. Totally 100% Help me. I'm trapped here with you. Please help me. Who would Nandor be?
Yeah, who would Nandor be?
I guess Stephen Shrewsbury would make a very good Nandor. Wrath James White would make an excellent Nandor. Tom Monteleone. What do they call the original vampire?
The Baron.
No, not the Baron.
Oh, the original one.
Tom would be good for the Baron, though. Yes, Tom Monteleone would make a great Baron. So let's see here. Who else do we have? Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, Mark says we're talking about original ideas. I think it doesn't matter if everything has already been done. Each artist, writer adds their own feel and tone, particularly highly talented people. Agree. Totally agree. It's all about your spin, your voice, your take on the tropes. Have you ever considered stepping into the superhero genre? I can see you do something along the line of The Boys or Invincible. Well, I have a little bit. For Marvel and DC, I've played with Devil Slayer, the Justice League, Batman, Superman, Harley Quinn, John Constantine, the Demon, Superman. So, I've gotten to do some stuff there. Would I do something for television in the superhero genre? Yeah, absolutely, in a heartbeat. I like that elements of what I did with Loki in Thor Metal Gods have since shown up in the Loki TV show. That's pretty fucking cool. Note to Disney, and Marvel, if you're watching this, a check would be even fucking cooler. But still, it's nice to see that you acknowledged what we did on Thor Metal Gods. But yeah, I mean, I've got a deep love for comic books and superheroes. We've talked before about not here, but we've talked on Defenders Dialogue. Growing up as a kid in the 70s, I was in a small rural town, and that was the only world I knew. So my window to the world was two things. It was Sesame Street and comic books. We never had a person of color move into our town until I was in high school. That's probably very hard for some of you younger folks to believe, but it's true. So, a lot of things like that. Not just people, but different cultures, different ways of thinking, different religions, things like that. I got all of that from Marvel and DC Comics. I think they were invaluable back then as a tool to teach kids about some of these things. So I have a deep love and appreciation for these characters. I don't read the new stuff. It's not for me, and that's okay. It shouldn't be for me. I'm a 54-year-old guy. I would much rather Spider-Man appeal to some kid who's reading it now than appeal to me. But yeah, I'd still love to do more superhero stuff. Speaking of children, well, I can't call him a child anymore. He's now a young man, but my youngest son, Firelord HD, Fallout New Vegas is better than Fallout 3. Well, buddy, I agree with you on that. We've had that discussion. Also, did you finish Jane Eyre? And if so, did you finish your book report on it? By the way, if you're watching this, go to Firelord HD's channel and subscribe and smash that like button. But I just want to say I'm very proud of this young man. He starts high school later this month, and he is in honors English. This summer, he had to read Jane Eyre and another book, and he's accomplished that. But he still also found time to read his father's novel, Terminal, and Joe Hill's short story collection, 20th Century Ghosts. And I think this weekend he's going to start on Stephen King's Different Seasons. So proud of you, buddy, and I love you. And yes, New Vegas is the best Fallout game ever. Yeah, agreed, man. So, all right. I think I can do like 2 or 3 more questions before my voice gives out. So if anybody else has another, put it in the chat. And if not, we'll call it quits for tonight. Like I said, I knew it was going to be a short one. I'll give it a moment, though, and let everybody type. In the meantime, since I'm not in my office, I don't have cool shit to show you. So how about I give you guys an exclusive bit of news that's not announced anywhere else. There you go, Firelord. So, while the questions are coming in, exclusive bit of news. So, of course, the complete short fiction of Brian Keene series. There's 3 volumes so far. I started edits on volume 4 today, which has a wonderful introduction by Christopher Golden that just made me laugh. But it goes back to Henry's question from earlier. This volume will collect all of my media tie-in stuff. So Doctor Who, X-Files, Aliens, the stuff I did in Edward Lee's world, Phantasm and Evil Dead, the stuff I did for Jack Finney's Body Snatchers, etc. All of that is going to be included in this next volume. So I don't have a release date yet. Like I said, I'm just now editing it and compiling it, but you can look forward to that. All right, so the last round of questions. Would love to see you or hear you and Chris do an entire podcast on the Swamp Thing, Alan Moore. You know what? If we were to ever do another one, we had already talked at one point. If we ever did another podcast, we would have to do DC. And what we came down to was either Swamp Thing or Commandy, the Last Boy on Earth. So there's a vote for Swamp Thing. And I agree. That stuff is timeless. I've been going back and rereading the Alan Moore run here recently. And man, it's still just chilling. And it's as groundbreaking now as it was when it came out. Also, Mary loves to tell the story about how I became such a fanboy with Steve Bissett, the artist on that series, that I was rendered speechless while she invited him to come have lunch with the two of us. And I didn't speak the entire lunch because Steve goddamn Bissett. Any other movie projects you can talk about? Not that I can talk about. I will say that we are very, 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 very close to getting something greenlit. It's just a matter of raising the financing. But I can't say what it is. I can't say how close we are. The pandemic messed a lot of that stuff up. And also, there's a new draft of a screenplay for Urban Gothic being written by somebody. Again, I can't say anything about it, but I have high hopes for that. There you go, the audio edition of the 7. And yep, I agree. Although I don't know, Tom, I think I would like to start from the beginning. You know, the 70s stuff, which I think only ran 22 issues. So you could do it in like 3 episodes of the podcast, and then work our way up to Alan Moore, which is another 21 issues, or no, another 19 issues. And then, you know, of course, the Moore Bissett Taliban run. I think we could stop after that. I've never gone back and reread the Rick Veitch stuff. I'm not sure how it would hold up, but yeah, definitely those. So, or maybe we just do the Moore run and it's a limited edition podcast or something. But all right, that is the cue for me to log off for the night. So thanks everybody, appreciate it, and be in touch soon. We'll do this again next week. Peace.